Well, hello there, wrestling fans. I'm John Hoppy, and you're listening to the Wrestling Fans Insight. I'm here with my buddy, my co-host, Bryan, the Hype Ballard. Bryan, it's been a while.
It's been a few weeks. At least in SummerSlam time, right?
Seems like we keep saying we're going to be back on schedule, but then life happens. We got things going on. My summer has been a little planned thanks to Sarah, but, I've been spending a little more time doing some personal things. So first, foremost, I'm always going to say I apologize, but here shortly with all my other obligations that I actually have to take care of. Once those simmer down, I will be back, hopefully a little more full time than what I have been. But Bryan, how's life for you?
It's good. We all get busy. Here's the thing though, and I kind of say this to everyone, like, yeah, we could force a bunch of content out, right? But would it be a quality conversation if we're in a rush or if we're, really like tagged in, but we're really exhausted, right? So I look at it as like, I would rather us do some good content and kind of get you guys thinking. And as we talk about different topics than to, just wear ourselves like down and then just, you get tagged in and you tap out. Right. So that's kind of my take, but it gets busy and I think we all get busy on our channels, but what's nice about the fans of ProWrestling.com is we all kind of help each other. Right. So.
And speaking of tap out, you've had some recent content on your tap out talk there. More importantly, the stuff with the recent passing of Hulk Hogan, but you also had a few podcasters do a short little segment with you there.
That was a fun project. And thank you for helping with that. It was really cool because, we just said, hey, who connects with the fans and audience? And we were able to splice together all your answers. You guys, everybody, Carlos and Mike from Chairshot and yourself. And I know I'm missing people.
Ted the Hillbilly Hill.
Ted the Hillbilly Hill. Everybody kind of chimed in. Marty Jannetty and Rob Van Dam, right? So it was kind of cool to just get those answers all kind of spliced in there. And I felt like that was just my way to try to give back because I can't keep up with shout out lists. And you guys know when I go into Twitter spaces, I'm usually just the silent observer. I might throw something in a chat, but so yeah.
But you also have some recognition from Leilani Kai recently too.
Yeah. Leilani and I, we follow each other and she, it was kind of came out of nowhere. She just kind of thanked me for, contributions to the business, which I just think is weird because I just think I'm a guy, we come on here and talk, right? We have fun. But it's kind of nice when you have legends that appreciate what we do. And the guys, it tells you, when you're out there talking on social media, you never know who's watching and listening. And, I've had a few interactions like that. It's been kind of really cool. But yeah.
So, anyways, now that we're kind of getting, hopefully winding down, I'm not going to guarantee we're going to be back again next week. Going to do my best that I may even do a solo. So, but Bryan, it's been an interesting last 3 weeks here in the wrestling world. The biggest news that kind of hit us hard, we had the passing of one of the biggest icons in the professional wrestling history. Hulk Hogan passes away, which I kind of found ironic on this day because this was Utah's Pioneer Day. And what a way to kind of think pioneer, Hogan being one of those trailblazers that's changed a big landscape in the professional wrestling business, but unfortunately he passed away at the age of 71. I'm going to go on I know this is where we both said this episode may either cancel us or it may get some good views. I've always never really cared to be the popular guy because I admit it, I've never been popular. I've always said what I thought has always been true to my opinion. I've always liked Hulk Hogan, the character, but as far as Terry, the human, I don't know the guy personally, but he did not have a great image, especially, with some special events of leaked footage from Gawker, which eventually Gawker ended up paying in the long run for that. But as far as Hulk Hogan passing, that did hit a blow to those of us who have been watching wrestling for the longest of time. I think Hulk Hogan did a lot for the wrestling business, and his last appearance with WWE, though, I kind of understand why the fans were the way they were. It's sad that that's going to be the last way we remembered Hogan appearing on WWE television. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. It is, when you think in retrospect, that news, it just hit hard and heavy all over the industry, right? I want to, first shout out WWE for how they handled giving him a 10-bell salute at every show, right? And they really just said, look, we need to honor the person that helped plant the major seeds in our industry, right? And you guys can see I have an autograph photo over here, right? I didn't get to meet him, but it was just a photo. But so obviously he affected my childhood as far as Hulk Hogan, right? And most people are into wrestling at some point because of guys and characters like that. John Cena, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, The Rock. I mean, so for me, it was, Hogan was a big part of that, getting into wrestling as a kid and seeing these larger than life characters. While, I feel like Hulk Hogan, put expectations onto our childhood and onto our wrestling industry that sometimes Terry Bollea, the person, could not even meet, right? And weren't always able to meet, right? And those expectations were so lofty. But I will say, when I talk of Hulk Hogan and I talk of all the memories that I've had, and I'm grateful to have had those, I've been able to connect with so many people because of pioneers in the industry like him that have done that work. And I've been able to make friendships like you guys, and like just, maybe even have a random conversation, and it was kind of a nice icebreaker. Oh, you're into wrestling. And then all because of the work that these legends do. So I celebrate the legends. I celebrate the characters. I think there is something to be said about separating the artist from the character, right? As a kid, you just know the character, and that's what you fall in love with. And I really have never met Terry Bollea. I don't know Terry Bollea. And I have no reason to know him and his family. And, that's a personal life thing versus appreciating an artist's work thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, again, it's kind of a bummer because, that's definitely showing our age where we're getting older ourselves. But yeah, I kind of feel Hulk Hogan didn't get the proper farewell that he deserved, as far as the wrestling industry. Again, on a personal battle, probably not one of the best as far as humanity, but as far as our hero going down, that it's really definitely a dark cloud over the wrestling world as far as what's happened there.
Well, and I do want to give one example. If you think of, it just popped in my head, Edge, Adam Copeland, his career would not have existed if it wasn't for the childhood that he had with Hulk Hogan, kind of like us. Edge is around that age, right? And I think about that. I'm like, wow, he does credit Hulk Hogan to a lot of his desire to get into wrestling, him and Christian. So, on the minimal level, even if you're a fan of Edge and Christian, you can say, well, you know what, because of laying the foundation in, Hulkamania, that did live through the wrestling industry and influence other Hall of Famers to, help us enjoy. So
as far as what would be your most memorable, what's your biggest memory of Hulk Hogan's career if you had
Sure.
one event?
If I only get one, it's WrestleMania 6 and the build up to that, because that's when I got into wrestling. I was young enough to start getting into it, but the Andre the Giant body slam and all that, and the Rocky 3 stuff, that all happened before and then I went back and watched it. Right. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that was the guy in the Rocky movie. Right. But WrestleMania 6, it was these two superheroes. It was, it was your Batman and Superman, or your Spider-Man and, whoever, right? Like, it was these two larger than life superheroes. And I truly did not know who was going to win. And I liked them both. I mean, I was ripping my shirts off to my mom's dismay, and she hated it because I was ruining stuff. But I was also running around the house like the Ultimate Warrior and painting up my face and, just, full force. So, I mean, that gave me the best childhood time where it was the buildup and that event. And I remember being so conflicted, just like the fans. And I was like, yeah, get them. No. Yeah. And I was back and forth. And when it ended, I was like, I guess, cool, but I'm also kind of bummed. And so that for me is it. NWO was cool too. But if I have to choose, I'm ultimately choosing WrestleMania 6 for what it meant for me. What about you? I'm just curious.
And kind of amazing you mentioned WrestleMania 6 because my most memorable moment was actually the year before WrestleMania 5, where the really intense buildup between the Macho Man Randy Savage, who was then the WWF champion, leading to defending the WWF championship against Hulk Hogan, all over with the jealousy of Hogan kind of being a little more handsy with Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It kind of played into Savage's little obsessive psychopathic character for that build. And, we've seen him continue to still be in the spotlight even after he dropped the championship to Hogan. But if there was ever a way to really tell a long-term story, that was definitely one of them, because that feud will always be cemented in both Macho Man and Hulk Hogan's legacy as the basically the rise and the downfall of the mega powers.
If I can ask, how did you watch that WrestleMania 5?
You really want to know?
Yeah. As a kid, like where was your go-to?
It was called Movie Buffs, where you could still rent VHF tapes. Because back then, it was hard we didn't have actually pay-per-view available at our cable stations here in Utah, believe it or not. In fact, when our cable stations actually finally had pay-per-view availability, believe it or not, it was actually WrestleMania 8 when we started having that, unless you had like satellite dish, but you had to be really wealthy to have satellite back then too.
Yeah, and your parents aren't paying that, talking them into paying that, right, for a show.
No, in fact, the funny thing, and not to kind of go off the Hulk Hogan topic, the only way I actually was able to listen to the events was turn into the pay-per-view channel where the signal was still scrambled, but the audio wasn't. And those were the days, unless you had an old school TV with the tuning knobs. My brother and I discovered a way to get the channel just right with the cable box, but adjust the channel, and we were actually able to tune the knob to kind of unscramble. You would still see the snow, but you could see a little more clear picture of what was going on in the ring.
I am guilty of that myself. I've done it. Most of mine was the video store, right? I called it the original WWE Network. It was the wall at Blockbuster, or my parents wouldn't let me spend money on this because wrestling's foolish, right? It was the library. They had free tapes. And I would go to the library, ride my bike, go get in. I'm like, let me get this tape, or, ask my grandma to take me in there. And, but I found a way to watch this stuff. And, it's weird how we're starting to evolve in the industry now of how we watch content, right?
Oh, yeah. It's amazing how much our technology has changed since then. So, but yeah, back then, I didn't pull a Moxley and go steal tapes from Blockbuster, but we did it the old fashioned way. I actually caught up a lot of wrestling. I didn't start watching wrestling until I was actually 8 years old. And so luckily, when the movie rentals were available then, and a lot of them started holding WWF tapes back then. That's how I caught up with everything up till, I believe, WrestleMania 7. And then WrestleMania 8 was the first WrestleMania where I was able to listen to the audio. And that's that's how that's how you know you had struggles back then. Oh, but anywho. Anyways, going on from a sad moment, we're going to move on to kind of a quick review of WWE SummerSlam, even though pretty much the majority of the IWC is already given that. This year was the first year that SummerSlam has went to a 2-night event similar to the WrestleMania sister there. I have to say I did actually enjoy SummerSlam, but for me, this is where I used to give AEW criticism for having so much in one night. But the problem with WWE is their presentation based, where AEW is no, we want action packed at one match after another. They don't like spend 20 minutes to retell a story. Kind of going back to like many times I've said in previous episodes where Ted the Hillbilly Hills mentioned it. Sometimes it's really hard to sit through those PLEs because you're just rewatching what's happened on Raw and SmackDown. Like, what's the point of having Raw and SmackDown if you're just going to air it right there?
Yeah.
No sense to watching Raw and SmackDown. You can just tune into the PLE once a month. And we're going to kind of get into a little more of that in the last part of our segment for today. But, for me, I had a hard time with it. I even have sometimes a hard time with SummerSlam. We only get 5 to 6 matches per night. I think night 2 was 7, if I remember right. But either way, I just don't feel like they needed a 2-night event for this. I felt it was way too promo heavy. The ads are getting unreal. Bryan, what was your thoughts going into that or coming after that event?
Yeah. Just over the presentation or the
just everything in general.
So presentation I've been on for a while now, right? It's the advertising to me just takes me out of the element of the storytelling, because I will give WWE credit this time. They've cooled down on, I noticed, calling it the Slim Jim table, right? And it used to throw me off because, I'm sitting there and I'm like into the story and they're like, oh, they were using the Slim Jim table. And I'm like, what? Huh? They're doing what? And then I half forget like what they're doing right in the ring. And so I did notice that slight adjustment, but all that stuff is still there. I did notice the logos in the ring were faded down and they didn't pop as much, which is actually, I feel like that's a compromise. I feel like the WWE is trying, even though they won't say, oh, well, we let the IWC and these people influence I feel like those are compromises, right? And there's never anything wrong with adjusting some presentation. I know that advertising is not going anywhere anytime soon. That's the world we're living in. But as we mentioned before in other episodes, I don't like having a pop-up blocker for when I watch my wrestling. But ultimately, I felt the 2-night format, it's different for WrestleMania. And it took me a little bit to warm up to it. And I felt like they get enough content in there to build a 2-night event, right? But to me, SummerSlam did not really need that. I feel SummerSlam, there was some matches and, like you said, filler in there that squeezed out this 2-night ticket sale aspect, right? And, I could see if you would have condensed that into the one night, I think that program would have rocked and rolled. And yes, there would have been some matches taken off, right? But I think you could have still had a solid 8 to 10 match card. And I think everybody would have walked away and said, wow, this is the second to WrestleMania in the year, right? The only PLE that I feel like maybe should go to the 2-night format would be Royal Rumble, right? Outside of WrestleMania. I feel like having a male and female, on different nights, I feel like that would make some sense. It does feel squashed into the one. Even though I feel like Royal Rumble could move to Women's Evolution. I feel like that could be a feature of that show in December. But I liked both main events of both nights. I thought the world title fights were fun. I liked the fact that they gave Gunther and CM Punk time to just work in that match. And that was in my opinion, a good match. And then I like that they introduced Seth at the end, right? And even though people were talking about this angle you know, in the IWC, we're a small part of that, right? Like there's the massive audience that just watches it, those kids that we talked about in the beginning, right? That maybe aren't in with the rumors and they just turn on their TV. I think it was a fun surprise, and it was very old school. It reminded me of when Sandman pretended he was blind, right? And he didn't do it just in the office. He did it at home. Well, I can't answer my door because I can't see, right? And so I felt like I appreciated Seth's ability to be very old school with it and try to show up backstage with crutches and not tell the talent. So much so where WWE, I heard some of the performers were a little upset about it because they felt like the company lied to them a little. You know, again, those are rumors, but, you know, not facts. But I heard that. I was like, well, we're in that day and age where you almost have to do that, you know, and if it doesn't pertain to your job or role, you might not have to be in the know on that. But I did enjoy that main event a lot. I enjoyed the John Cena main event, you know, for what they were doing and what it was told. And, you know, there was a few other fun matches in there. You know, the Dom Mysterio match was fun with AJ and it paid a nice little tribute. Could you argue that some of these matches didn't have to be on the show? Sure. Right. And I think we could squeeze it down to one night, but we're just not in that direction anymore. So they have to think of a way to make these things better. I think the King of the Ring tournament does help with, you know, getting dedicated matches to SummerSlam, but it's a big ask for the WWE to try to do that. So,
Well, let's kind of touch base on the one particular end of SummerSlam. This is another one that IWC just went batshit crazy, pardon my language, but we saw the return of Brock Lesnar, which obviously now we know what's next for John Cena here for his retirement tour. It's really kind of an interesting figure because, and I know, again, we'll probably get some backlash on this episode. The one thing I really want to, I'm going to probably really get a little feelings hurt. Everybody's so upset that he's involved with the lawsuit. And unfortunately, even though I'm not a lawyer, I'm smart enough to realize, and I'm not saying that IWC isn't smart enough. Sorry, that was probably poor choice of words on my part. But you have to look at the legal wording. He is not a defendant in the case. And what's really bad for Janelle's side is they said Brock did nothing illegal. And now all of a sudden they want to get pissy because Brock is now being shown on TV. Well, okay, if Brock did nothing illegal, then we're having some issues here because some ways you're kind of clearing them, but on a morale standpoint, no. And don't get me wrong, this is not a defense for Brock Lesnar. I will not defend Brock Lesnar on the things that have been confirmed because, yeah, it's not awesome. But at the same point, WWE is all about making money. And we'll get even deeper into that in the last segment. Right now, WWE, they're in it to make money, and Brock draws money, sadly, no matter how morale or what kind of morale standpoint you have or not. The more likely case, WWE fan diehards are going to want the Brock Lesnar and John Cena match one more time. And Bryan is, you know, you and I have been fans of WWE for quite some time. I'm kind of interested in see what your take is with Lesnar returning for the Cena retirement tour.
Yeah, I liked it because I was truly surprised. And I to a point, I think that's why some people got a little mad. Because not all, but some, they don't like to be surprised. They like to think we're smart and we know every little thing and we're insiders, right? And I love the fact that I got surprised. And I was watching it with a friend of mine. I looked at him and I said, they actually did that. And I said, I heard nothing about that. I love the surprise element. That, again, kind of took me back to a point of why I like wrestling. I like being shocked and surprised at things. Brock Lesnar showing up was that. I don't think I've seen anything or anybody had any news on that. And I don't think it was in their head because of all the other stuff. But again, I always get into his work. It's quick work, right? It's you're in the ring. I mean, it's a 20-minute match. It's power, go, go, go. And again, I like the MMA elements he's introduced over the years. It gives a clear direction for John Cena, which I was wondering what they were going to do, if they were going to take the belt off of him and kind of turn him back into face, where that was going to go from here. I heard an interesting rumor reported. I wonder if it'll be true, because I said, who's ultimately going to end John Cena's career? And I heard a report or a rumor about Gunther being considered, highly considered. And I was like, that's interesting, because he would have Goldberg and John Cena all in 2025. That's really interesting. So when I heard that, I didn't discard that one pretty quick, because I was like, that's probably something to that. I'm sure there is a discussion. Doesn't mean it's true, but they could talk. But Brock coming back, I think that is going to give Cena purpose. And if you want Cena to go from this heel to this face really quick, bring back somebody with a little controversy that it's hard for people to cheer for, right? And that will turn the other guy face so quick, even though he was already kind of going there. I don't think I ever really hated John Cena, right? Like during the turn, but, and I almost feel like he was always faking his heel turn, and he was just kind of like trying to be a heel, but sometimes Tiger can't change their stripes. I did enjoy though the introduction. Not that we have to get to this, but I'm curious where Cody Rhodes' story will go from here, because it's great. Cody's great chasing the title, but what does he do with the title after? And that's going to be the next thing. But to answer your question, I did like Brock. Brock's here for the short time. I mean, he's never going to be the guy that's here 24/7, Monday Night Raw every week, SmackDown he's going to be here. He's going to show up probably for Survivor Series or some international show to draw, But have they even announced when this is going to occur yet?
They haven't. I'm going to say it's probably just a little too soon for their France show. My guess is it will probably more than likely be Survivor Series. Just, I can't remember how many more dates John Cena has left, or appearances left in his contract. I'm sure somebody will bring that up to us in a side chat, but I would think you would want him at the bigger show, which would be the Survivor Series. Unless, I can't remember which event did they normally have in October. Is it Bad Blood? No.
So they keep switching it every so many years.
Yeah, they've changed it over the last couple of years and kind of throws us all off.
Yep.
Two options. He will probably either show up in the October pay-per-view, but I think it would be better if they did Survivor Series.
Is there a Saudi show coming up too, I believe?
I believe they do have a Crown Jewel show coming up. So
I could see them utilizing him there too. I mean, it's big money.
But anyhow, I agree with a lot of your takes. I think that's a big thing that many fans don't take into consideration is the face heel. Even though John Cena is not a face, he's not a heel, he's a human being. But that was a clickbait statement, by the way. But you made a very valid point, which I don't think many think these through. They just want to have that instant reaction, be pissed off at everything. I think it was actually a smart move on WWE, bring Brock back for that villain, for everybody who's loving Cena right now. And again, WWE's in it to make money. Lesnar draws the money, whether we like it or not. Moral standpoint, sorry, need to put that to the side.
Can I ask actually something on that? Because do you think, and I was popped in my head, do you think that Brock was there in place of The Rock and Travis Scott? Do you think that was kind of like, well, call Brock up and plug him into that? And, and I think they just, because it could have very well been something like that. They tried to dig back up, right? And I don't know how people would have reacted to that. Honestly,
I don't know, because The Rock just recently had a movie come out, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was the MMA legend. They just put in the Hall of Fame, if I remember right. I can't remember the guy's name. It's driving me nuts. I'm sorry, MMA fans. But no, I think the problem is Rock's schedule outside the WWE. It's really hard for him to match up with how fast paced WWE tries to do everything. And sorry, he's just not available all the time like we hope he would. He's a busy guy, just like Cena's a busy guy. He's got things going on outside WWE that are beyond his control. And I think that's the situation with The Rock. As far as Travis Scott, I think after the reputation he gained from everybody in the back and how fans saw how he handled the story with Cody and everything, I just think it was a good move to say, yeah, you're kind of starting to be a liability for our talent. We can't have this anymore. And, I think WWE made a move. Did not have him come back was the right thing. So as far as Brock being in their place, no, I have a feeling this was something Cena more than likely had planned all along. We just didn't see. We were surprised with it.
Yeah.
As everything's transitioning from the championship run, dropping the championship to Cody and showing what's next in store for Cena's retirement tour.
Yeah. Because I kind of took the thought of, I think the Travis Scott was a little buyer's remorse on WWE's end, right? And they wanted their 30-day guarantee, money back. And I feel like from a story standpoint, with all this integration, I felt like it could have been there. But then, Brock is always the guy that Vince used to just say, call up Brock, throw him in there. We can plug and play him into Roman. You can plug him into really. And it's like, he was always their speed dial guy. It's like the consultant, right? You don't want to pay the money for the consultant, but you're like, call the consultant. We got an issue. We got to take care of it. We got a gap in the story and we need to call up the consultant. He's a sure thing. He'll get it done. And I think that's kind of their breaking glass in case of emergency. I think that's Brock Lesnar. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Do you feel the John Cena heel turn, did it ever stick, or did it, now that we know it's ending, did it stick? Did it feel rushed? What do you think on that?
I just think it didn't go the way WWE hoped it would.
Yeah.
Or the way John Cena hoped it would. Either way, it kind of reminds me of 2000 or 2001 Steve Austin. Steve Austin wanted to turn heel, and Vince back in the day said, no, I don't think you should because your merchandise sales are way too hot. And we just don't see the fans turning on you, even switching you to the Alliance. And, of course, we saw how it played out. Vince was right on that very, very moment, and sadly, I think that was just similar to what happened to Cena. It was with everyone knowing this is his final run with the WWE. You can't boo a guy like that. I mean, especially as much as he's done outside WWE, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the movies, everything else, charities. How can you boo a guy like that? How can you root against him?
For the record, I think John did a great job trying to make that work. I don't think it was any of his work that made it go quick. I do think that the supporting cast around just wasn't there, and I don't have the answers. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is what I would have done. Nothing came out of it. And I was thinking too NWO-ish, right? Because we get stuck sometimes into that. But with Hogan's turn, an NWO happened, right? And it changed wrestling. And nothing major changed. John did a great job trying to make it go, but nothing major came out of it. And at the end of the day, there was no younger talent or anybody that benefited too much from it either. So,
although it was kind of funny to watch him and R-Truth exchange recently,
that was fun. Yeah.
You know, it was fun to watch him kind of flip that back at Truth. So in
Yeah.
Truth, kind of left a little puzzled. But anyways, we're gonna take a why don't we take just a minute to kind of throw some things out here, Brian? Want to just make sure we give a shout out to our brother Carlos Estrada there on the X app. He has some X Space shows going on, Raw Reactions with Carlos on Mondays and Wednesday Night Chaos, obviously on Wednesdays. Be sure to join him Mondays after Raw and Wednesdays after AEW Dynamite. They love to get together, have a group chat, and usually his space gets recorded and put on Spotify if you don't catch it live or can't find the link. So go give him a follow at C to the LOS 77 or at Conquer the No. And be sure to check him out, ask him details on his show. Be sure to get in there, get your voice heard. It's a group of wrestling fans that love to give their opinions and have fun old wrestling talk. Be sure to follow Bryan on the X app. Bryan, your handle there?
At the Bryan Adkins, and then on YouTube at Tap Out Talk. I forgot I'm supposed to do the X thing whenever you say Twitter X or X.
Thank you for not doing the crotch chop live on the camera there. Be sure to check out and participate in our X community, the Fans of Pro Wrestling, and check it out under the Fans of Pro Wrestling's file at FOPW Network. Be sure to go hit that follow button on the FOPW Network. And right there in the spotlight, you should see the entry for the Fans of Pro Wrestling community. Also, follow us on the X app. Bryan already gave it his, but here's mine at WFI Pod. And I also admin the FOPW Network, the Fans of Pro Wrestling Network account. So be sure to let us know in our DMs what you think of this show or how we can improve. We also have a group chat on the X, the Fans of Pro Wrestling. Just get with me, Carlos, or Bryan in our DMs on how to join that group chat. We do have just a couple of things we require. So again, just be sure to ask us. And hopefully I'm going to get some time to update this page. It's been a while. I'm going to plan on showcasing some more podcasts and YouTube channels here shortly, but check out our page, thefansofprowrestling.com. All right, Bryan. Now, are we ready to get into the meat and potatoes of our episode here?
My notes pulled up on this one. Yeah.
So this one's going to be a lengthy one. We apologize. We're definitely going to go over the 1 hour mark, I'm sure. So, but this is kind of an interesting deal. Bryan, one early morning, I can't remember what the morning was. I thought I had it pulled up here. Oh, yeah. It was the morning. It was actually 4 days ago when it was announced. So, which I believe was Thursday morning. Breaking news, WWE premium live events are headed to ESPN platforms in the United States starting in 2026. Excuse me. This is kind of interesting, but Bryan, you also had a shareholder meeting that morning. So I'm going to give you the mic and let you talk away.
All right. So they announced the announcement, and then there was a meeting, later that evening. And I feel like WWE did do that, to have a major announcement and then to have a fourth quarter shareholder meeting. Some overall things, $29.99 for PLEs that are moving to the ESPN network. Let me get out of the way a couple things, and I'll give my thoughts on kind of where all this is. But just so people are correctly informed. So it's just for the PLEs that's moving for the $29.99. So you'll still have Raw and Netflix, and Peacock will still get the rights to SmackDown. CW still has the rights to NXT. Okay. And the library as it stands right now, which is what I love all the old WCW stuff and all the old PLEs. Right now, the library is just kind of out there in limbo for negotiation for somebody to pick up. So that means that could get split off. The front runners, I believe, from what I'm hearing right now, is Netflix is looking at that, possibly integrating that pretty strongly. But WWE's open to, selling that to ESPN, selling that to Netflix. So my thing is they're going to split up these live PLEs to the library, right? So it's kind of like the WWE network when it moved to Peacock, but now it's getting chopped up and sold and auctioned off, right? So it's now at an auction and it's to this person and to this person. It's great for business and profits and shareholders, right? But, you know, as a fan, and I'm going to speak as a fan on this as well, I just don't know if that is the best move for the fans overall, right? And that's why I speak like that. But it's also, there is a rumor of TNA and AAA, which have partnerships with WWE brand, possibly looking at Peacock. So Peacock may not get shut out of the wrestling world, but the WWE did have a tough choice that they mentioned on the call, that they were, you know, thinking, man, this is a tough choice, but we ultimately do want to go to ESPN and we want to be in there with NFL and MLB and Reported and, you know, all that stuff. They, you know, kind of did hint that, you know, they did pass up offers of more money to choose the ESPN partnership, right? So somebody else could have came in, they didn't say who, but they could came in and actually, you know, gotten a bigger deal than already, even though this is worth a lot. So, but they felt like it was about getting their brand out there and solidified with all the other great sports. So that's kind of the corporate speak of that. Ways that a fan, I'm looking and I'm like, man, this is going to end up being like $300 a year, right? Like $30 a month times 12 just to watch PLEs live. And, you know, some people mentioned if you already have cable, you could use your cable credentials, right, to log into the ESPN app, and that would not be charged. You know, it'd be free to do that, right? So if you're paying for cable, it's kind of tied in. But again, cable, there's a reason we got away from cable, a lot of us, right? Like we went to the streaming world and because cable was getting too expensive. And so there is that. And then there is some, you know, people saying that they're going to utilize the VPN option and pay, you know, 10, $12 for a VPN. And yeah, and a VPN would just allow you to, you know, set your home site as an international site, which then you could stream these PLEs through Netflix out of the United States country. So you could say you're in Canada or et cetera. So, and then there are, of course, multiple websites out there, right, that you guys could also through independent restream services that may not necessarily sometimes be the safest from viruses, but do your own research. I won't speak to any of those because I'm not going to say you're going to get a virus on all those pages, but I will say that, you know, do your own research, you know, and look and see and, you know, talk to friends. And, you know, the ultimate thing, reason I say this is, you know, the cable companies and the ESPN app, it's going to be easy, right? You click it on, you turn it on, just like you do on Peacock. But that price is going up for fans. And we're in an economy where not everybody can, you know, afford those kind of increases, right? And, you know, I mean, I always would get Peacock myself, and I would pay for the year because that gives you even more of a discount, you know. But now I'm kind of re-looking at that. And so I wanted to make sure everybody was informed with how the changes, because when this was rolled out, it was rolled out so fast. And I felt like it was not properly covered in the release of what all the changes entailed, because they wanted to get that announced before the shareholder call. And that's, you know, you've got to have something to get people excited about money. So my overall thoughts, though, and excuse me, because I'm going to read some notes here, so I may not be looking right at you guys, but there was a mention on this call of how attendance was down at all the PLEs, right? But since ticket
Bryan, those are record breaking.
Oh, they're record breaking, but how hard is it? I mean, I don't know. Does a single night PLE have a chance of beating a 2-night PLE in a record breaking, right? So,
well, and sorry, I didn't mean to stop you,
no.
but the only thing that drives me nuts when I see that is, okay, how many of those fans were the same fans from night 1 into night 2? And I kind of feel they misrepresent that. And not to be mean, not to take away WWE's records, you can't really, in my opinion, you can't make that number gel right 100%. If there's a lot of the same fans from night 1 to night 2, I don't care how you try to justify it. Well, it's attendance. Like, okay, but if it's the same person, no matter if it's attendance or whatnot, you can't, you should not count the same people that were there night 1 to night 2. That just doesn't gel well. I'm sorry.
Well,
but
no,
anyways,
to your point, the same fans night 1 to night 2. But what's interesting is these aren't the same fans also in attendance that have been in attendance for a very long time, right? I'll give you an example of my uncle and his 3 boys. WrestleMania used to be their annual trip. That was the boy bonding trip with their dad, and they would get the whole WrestleMania weekend package, right? But now, if you was to do that and take your 3 kids, right, and yourself to these events, you're priced out of the market as a fan, right? And they have not went to a WrestleMania, and they never missed a WrestleMania. When I say never, they went to every single WrestleMania, all the way to about WrestleMania 30, if I remember right. But it got to a point, things kept going up. And especially in the last few years, they don't even think about it. And those same cousins of mine that are now grown and have their own kids, they don't even think about passing that tradition on, right, of going to a wrestling event with their kids, because it is insanely expensive. But, you know, while they did admit attendance was down, to your point, overall, despite record-breaking numbers, they did say that since the prices are a lot higher per ticket, financially, it doesn't really matter in that sense, because they are still making, plus they did factor in the amount of sponsorship partners also tied into that amount of money. So, you know, all the advertisements we see on the ring, you know, through the commercials, things like that. So all of those things factor in, and they are making record breaking. They actually called SummerSlam it becoming the second WrestleMania of the year in a 2-night format. And they want to do this across multiple PLEs, with Survivor Series and Royal Rumble being targeted next, right? It won't be for this year's, but should be the following years after that. But they seen the value, and TKO now is running the company. So we don't just, you know, they're not just owning WWE, right? It's PBR bull riding, and it's UFC and a couple other things they own. But WWE was getting very high accolades as crushing it. You know, they're like, you guys are rocking and rolling, and you're crushing it in this new partnership. And I will say it is good for business when you have all these different partnerships. That creates leverage to negotiate, where you can, hey, I'll sell you Raw, or hey, I tell you what, I can sell you AAA or TNA's. You know, I can work a deal out with them and not leave you in the dark. Nick Khan is he's a very good businessman. I mean, the guy knows how to make money. I see it. And, you know, now as a fan, you know, I will say, outside of being a little bit priced out of stuff, and, you know, just a lot of this just kind of avenue, overall, I feel like there's a hard focus on impressing the businesses instead of the fans. And, you know, I'll just say it is by design, because everything you do is by design in a corporate world. But I don't know if they want to make their fans mad. It's not that. It's the, you know, they value is the word I'm looking for. They highly value these business partnerships, all these different Netflix and ESPN and Prime Energy, and, you know, all these different advertisements. They value these things so much that they want more, and they want to show profit growth, right? And while, you know, I feel like on some of the calls before, I would hear things about the fan experience. So I would hear things like, oh, we're going to add drones to the production crew, and while we're spending money there, we're going to actually enhance the fan experience because of different angles we're going to be able to do, and our production team's going to have. And then they felt like that would lead to more sponsors, right? So I get the money aspect, but I didn't hear a lot of what the fan experience was, of what they expect when watching World Wrestling Entertainment. And I heard more about the business partnerships, and, you know, making money is an important part of that world in a public shared company world. But it worries me when I don't hear about the fan experience, or I don't hear, you know, years ago I would hear, oh, we're bringing John Cena in for a Summer of Cena, we're calling it, right? And Stephanie would say it, right? And McMahon, and, you know, and she was like, and what we really feel is, you know, that will help with merchandise sales, but we really feel the fans are really going to, you know, have fun with it. And that's the difference that I see in the TKO era. I don't see the much of the speaking to the experience of why people come to the show. But I do hear the numbers. I do hear the partnerships. And I feel like we'll get to a point where there's a lot of long-term fans that could get priced out of that market. I feel that ESPN right now, they're giving the PLEs away for that $29.99. But if you look at the other brands in TKO, I do see like that's a paywall. UFC has established a paywall to where you pay for the ESPN Plus, then you pay for each pay-per-view. And I hope, but I got to think about this. This is the same company now that owns WWE. And if they just went straight to that model, I think there would be a major uproar and a lot of risky business, right? But I can't help in the back of my mind wonder if they are breadcrumbing us to that. So what do? You say, well, we're going to give it away, you know, for the next couple years or year. You just got to pay $30. Well, a year or two later, are we going to say, well, $30, we're not going to ever do a price increase, but we're going to have you start paying for WrestleMania. But the other ones you still get in the package. It's conditioning. And any company is very good at conditioning people to their product, right? You look at Apple, TKO, WWE, Microsoft. I mean, every company does it. You know, no company is doing something unique and evil, right? Like it's not like that, but they are doing that and they think like that. And I think this is that pathway. You know, they did it when they made the Peacock deal. And they got rid of their WWE network and they said, yeah, but look, we're going to condition you guys to getting used to another partner housing our info. And we liked it because we got more content outside of WWE. But that also conditioned them to saying, well, what if we have other partnerships like that? Netflix and Peacock. And I feel the American market gets hit with it first. I just don't know if, you know, and if you guys are from a foreign market, let us know in the comments. Is it different mentality wise, but is some of this happening because we allow it to happen? You know, do we want it to happen? You know, and as long as we keep, you know, watching that, and we do, I am lucky and fortunate that we live in a world, and I'll end it here and turn it back to you, John, but we live in a world where we have a lot of access to a lot of wrestling that we didn't necessarily have. We don't have to trade VCR tapes, right? Or go to the library, like we mentioned in the beginning. And we live in a world now where it makes me appreciate what AEW is doing. And AEW feels like old WWF when it was privately owned. And hey, I just have to get HBO Max and I can watch all their programming on demand and I can go back and watch their catalog. They are still in a pay-per-view model, right? And who knows, they may keep that or move on from that someday. But so we have an AEW option. We have TNA Wrestling, even though it's not owned by WWE, it's got a partnership there, but we do have that. We can now watch, you know, New Japan and Stardom, right? And I know Carlos and friends and Stampede and all them guys, they watch that stuff like a lot. And I've tagged into some Stardom, except for it's hard for me to get past all the Japanese commentary where I don't know what they're saying. But watching just the wrestling, it's fun. And we do have access to other things. It just depends what avenue we want to go. And for me, you know, I'm not going to stop watching altogether. And we'll get into kind of what the community feels here in a minute. But I will kind of shift towards a little bit of, you know, yeah, I'm probably going to watch other products a little bit more than I do WWE a little bit. Because, it's all the commercials, it's in your face and some of the cost. And I'm like, you know what? I may not watch as much and I may shift over to another brand and be perfectly fine and get my wrestling fix. So, but yeah, I know that was a lot, but I had a lot of notes. So thank you for giving me the platform there and your thoughts on it.
Well, first off, thank you for being one on the team that is able to attend those types of meetings, because sometimes I think this is where the majority of wrestling fans don't have that access to attend something like that. So where our podcast is a little different from a lot of the other independents, at least we'll have some of that backstage knowledge. So, no, I appreciate you giving us all that information. This one's going to be a lengthy one on myself too. I know it will sound like blah, 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 babble, 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 like all my other episodes. First and foremost, if for many of you that see the title, I gave this, is WWE giving the fans the eye gouge? For not too many people are familiar, eye gouging, obviously a heel tactic, not seeing what was coming. Um, it's kind of really conflicting, especially when you watch the way media presented to you has evolved. Like Brian's mentioned, we've had cable and satellite for so long, but now that we've kind of got the cord cutters coming out, like Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, um, sadly to throw in the black box market now. Uh, this is starting to become the same problem that we've had with cable and satellite, and we're now starting to feel it in the cord cutting media now. You got Netflix, Disney, Hulu. Well, Hulu sounds like it's soon diminishing, but Discovery, Paramount, Peacock. You got all these damn different apps, and what drove me nuts is I know the idea with the WWE network was try to get everything all scrunched in one network. And for, like Brian mentioned, now they kind of done the breadcrumbs by getting the partnership out. They joined Peacock to get the eyes on other product included with your Peacock membership. Smart move by WWE. Unfortunately, Peacock wasn't making any money, and they're kind of slowly having their problems now. So now they move on to ESPN. My only problem is just recently we had sorry we had WWE Raw go to Netflix, and I think if I remember right, Brian, wasn't the plan if things were to go successful, Netflix was able to eventually gain the other two shows?
So they still want to split those up. They
No.
want to keep them. They want to keep, because it's all by diversity and diversification of the portfolio. So
Okay.
they want money coming in from multiple, because that creates leverage to negotiate. But to your point, a lot of those services, like for example, Peacock, aren't as available internationally.
Right.
So that's where Netflix is inheriting all of that. Where it was the WWE network, believe it or not, was still operable outside the United States, and that is now done. And so
that's all moved to Netflix, correct?
That's moved to Netflix
internationally.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that was the goal all along. But, business is a tricky thing because anything can happen. And like Brian mentioned, those of us here in the United States, we're kind of the guinea pigs for the rest of the world as far as media availability. I kind of feel like WWE may have hurt themselves with Netflix doing this, going to the ESPN deal. I don't know how well their relationship's been with Netflix. What I can say is my biggest gripe, and luckily I have other means of watching everything else like some people out there. I don't think it's fair for the fans who have been trying to save money, getting away from the cable and satellite dish price gouging. They went to the cord cutting programs because it was saving them a ton of money. And now we're starting to see the increase of cord cutting program apps going up now. Unfortunately, it's just something you can't get away from. Everything goes up eventually and then evolves to something new technology and so on. It is the way it is. But for me, as a fan, if I'm going to pay $30 going from a WWE network that went from $9.99 to Peacock, which I believe the latest was $15 a month if you wanted the premium without ads, it's actually going up now to even more. I think it's $16.99 a month, or you can pay a yearly fee, I think $169.
Yeah.
The thing that drives me nuts, you now are going to ESPN for PLEs. You're paying $30 a month. I'm not sure what most people pay for the Netflix package. I want to say on average, that's what, another 15, 19 a month.
Yeah, you're right on that.
But then you're also having to find you're also having to find SmackDown by any means on the USA Network. So whatever you're paying for that, to me, I kind of feel like we just got kicked in the nuts as wrestling fans or fans of WWE. As much as people gripe about the way AEW's gone, AEW's done the smart thing by keeping Dynamite and Collision on the HBO Max as well as TNT and TBS. They have Ring of Honor that stays on its own network, which I think is the smart move. The only thing I don't like is getting some of the Ring of Honor stuff on AEW. I think that would be okay once in a while, but to me, that's the only gripe I would have with that. But where I'm going is, at what point are you pricing the fans too much? And to what you mentioned, Brian, I kind of feel like they didn't really keep the fans who have a budget in mind. And it almost feels like they don't care about the fans. They care more about the business deal. And it's not going to make me stop watching WWE. Don't get me wrong on that aspect, because I still enjoy WWE's content. I just don't think it was the right move. And I think it is going to hurt them a little bit. I do believe, like you mentioned before, they are anticipating a bit of a drop as far as, subscriptions when going forward here, but they're hoping to build it back. All I can say is, if you want the fans to come back, I think, one, you need to simplify your content for the fans to come watch you. If you want to bring that subscription back up, get everything a little more centrally located for them. Make it easy for them to come watch your stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping it simple. Sometimes simple is more, less is more, as the many times you and I have said on the program, especially when it comes to pay-per-views. But sometimes you don't want to be too less where it doesn't get the more either. Just, I feel like you need to provide the right value for the fans. And I'm actually was debating throwing this in here, but there was a little bit of a war of words on the X app lately with, especially, I can't believe I'm going to side with him, Vince Russo, going up against Disco Inferno, Gilbretti. Excuse me, folks.
Well, and to your point, I think there's a lot of debate on this one too. So yeah, I'm interested to see what you have to say there.
Yeah, give me 1 second, folks. I'm sorry.
And while he's doing that, let me kind of talk to, I feel that there is a opportunity for a lot of other markets. Like, I think the door is wide open for AEW. I think it's a chance for them to grab some of that long-term wrestling fan base that they've already have, but I think they could get people more consistently with this change in the industry now. And kind of what John cited there, it's easy to watch their programming. You don't have to have a TV guide, if you will, for those, that, age-old dinosaur, but you don't have to have a program outline that says, oh, I have to go to this app and this channel for this, right? AEW is like, yeah, we're on HBO Max, or if you got cable, TNT and TBS, check us out, right? And it's so simple. There's a fan base from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s that are going to transition more. They probably watch both, but they're going to probably give more time to AEW because it's easier and because, that's the program they're kind of used to seeing and just checking out and watching and entertaining. So, but go ahead, John.
Yeah, sorry, folks. I getting dry mouth, and as many of you know, I have a hard time with that sometimes, being in the desert here with allergies. But sorry, my eyes are going to be away from the camera like usual because it's hard for me to get my camera lined up just right. But yeah, Disco Inferno was kind of, well, not even kind of, he called out Vince Russo, Al Snow, on their podcast recently, but this is something I really kind of agree with Vince Russo, and I'm sure a lot of the diehard pro wrestling fans will even agree. The absolute fact that Netflix USA are losing viewers because more and more people are figuring out what WWE Raw SmackDown doesn't warrant 4.5 hours of their time every week so that they're catching clips on social media. Guilty sometimes, which you yourself has claimed 100 times, tells you the show sucks. And I'm not going to always say the show sucks. It's just really hard to find the time to really watch all that. And I kind of agree with that part. But the problem you're dealing with, Glenn, is that you, like many others, have lowered the bar, which has allowed WWE to be below average at best, which I don't think they've been below. I will disagree somewhat with that. You want evidence, sit there and watch both shows every week in their entirety, and which you admit you never do. And I'm not going to finish the last comment because I thought it was a little over the line. But with that said, Bryan, I agree with Vince Russo on the point getting across that. Do you really feel, and they didn't mention the WWE and ESPN deal at the PLEs, but I could see where that's going, especially with what they're saying. Ever since their move to Netflix and moving SmackDown to 3 hours, isn't it? Do you find it hard sometimes to go through 4.5 hours just on the weekly program?
100% yes. It's and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's the YouTube highlights. Sometimes I'll watch it on demand, right? Like when I have time to watch the stuff. And a lot of times, sometimes there are some talent that they get my fast forward button, right? I won't say which ones, but there are some talent I'm just like, I'm not interested in that. And I'll fast forward, not full on fast forward where I'm just blowing past it, but to where if something looks interesting, like 2X, right? And then I'm like, whoa, what happened there? Maybe I do want to see this. But, and I do give those same talents the chance to grab my interest. So I don't just fast forward every time I see them on TV, but I do say, okay. And if they don't grab me in that first few minutes, then I'm just, that's where I become like a TikTok user. I'm like, swipe, and I move to the next thing, right? That I want to see and then I'm invested in. So when you mention it, John, it's, you got a few hours of Raw, SmackDown, and, plus the other brands that you may like AEW, but, and God help you if you want to watch NXT or anything else, right? Because then you're adding in more. And I know I can't give that much time in my personal life to watch every minute. In kind of case to this point, a lot of the legends that worked in the industry from WWF days, they don't watch the product now, right? And they're retired. They're at home. And a lot of them, they're not as in tune with the product, mostly because I feel like they like to try to connect with their fans more, right? And do conventions and do things. But when your legends aren't really, a lot of them aren't watching it. And they're like, I watch like an hour a week. And I'm like, I think some of the fans are like that too. They're like, I watch about 2 hours a week, right? So kind of to answer your question, I think it's fans and legends that kind of in that same mind.
So now I kind of want to transition that. You go from paying, $9.99 a month to $15 a month. Now you're going to want me to pay $30 a month for a PLE that is promo heavy with ads on top of that. I have a hard time spending $30 to watch a 5-6 match card.
Yep. When,
as much as people go, well, you pay $50 for AEW. Well, yeah, the only downfall with AEW is it's a 4 sometimes 6 hour pay-per-view, but you're also getting for $50, you're getting anywhere from 12 to 14 matches. I mean, in some way, if you weigh that out, $50 for the 14 matches compared to $30, you're getting half of that. You're definitely getting your value from AEW.
One of the things I've noticed too, think of the change of ownership over the years, right? Say what you want, but Vince was a good owner and he built the industry, right? Or modified the industry to what it was. And, Vince had his pulse on everything. He had his fingers on every pulse. And he had a good indication of what the fans would and would not like. And sometimes it would come up with hokey stuff. Sometimes the talent, but he always had an idea, and he was always the first to speak up, and everybody listened when they said, no, that's not going to be received well. No, they're not going to pay for that, and now we do have Triple H, who I think is good in the locker room sense, right? Because he was one of the boys in there, but we have a company that's just used to owning companies, right? With the TKO Endeavor group. And how many of those people, I wonder, are diehard wrestling fans and know the industry that they have and that they purchased, right? And how many, you can have a Triple H and you can have a Dana White in UFC, right? That's supposed to steer the ship. But how much of the ownership of the business knows what they own, what they operate? I might be very good in my career, but if you say, hey, Bryan, go open a pizza shop, am I going to be good at running that pizza shop, or do I really know what happens when a pizza shop operates? No, but I do know the business of putting money into something and making something make money. But where I see AEW, Tony Khan, I always say, he's like, one of his downfalls maybe is he's too nice of a guy, but he's a true wrestling fan at heart. And, it's kind of refreshing when you have somebody that really wants to see the fan experience enhance, right? And make money. That's also important, right? Because, business says, oh, I'm going to lose a bunch of money and be happy. But I do see that, I do question and challenge how many of them are really diehard wrestling fans, or did they just say, oh, well, Hulk Hogan was cool back in the day, right? And now we're going to buy this company. So, and I'll be interested to see what they do with their other brands, because they just bought bull riding. And do they actually know what goes on in bull riding in PBR, right? And so I'm interested to see what this company does with that. Not that I'm a big bull riding fan, but I will kind of just see how they operate that business. And do you know what you bought? Do you know the fan base you bought? Because you did just buy a big fan base that came, and they already like your product. So are you going to do anything to maintain them and keep them while enhancing your business? So.
And that's my biggest worry right there with the whole ESPN WWE deal, because how many WWE fans are actually going to be watching all the other stuff? Some probably will, and get a little more expansion in their hobbies, hopefully. But yeah, it's just, I think it wasn't, I think the price hike was just maybe a little much on it. But let's see what happens. We don't know. Well, this might increase it too. We don't know.
What worries too is it's going to go up even more, right? Because think about it. Yeah. Netflix sneaks it up $1, $2 every other year, right?
Exactly.
So it's going to go in that direction, not the other direction, right? So that's what I'm really worried about for the heart of wrestling fans.
Okay. And interesting enough, Bryan, you did a poll on X.
Yes.
That was quite interesting. And do you want to give the results, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I got them right here. So on X at the Bryan Adkins, I did a poll because I felt like I just wanted to get. We talk about things here on our show, right, John? And we talk about Wrestling Fans Insight and all of our platforms, and we have our thoughts, but also we have to zoom out and say, are we really connected with what everybody feels, right? Is that how everyone feels? And so I did this poll with that in mind, and I simply said, where are you watching wrestling in 2026? And I gave 4 options. And the first option was WWE on ESPN and Netflix, AEW on HBO Max, TNA and AAA possibly on Peacock. And then my final option was none. I'm done. Right. And so the results of that I found interesting because, and I didn't want to create any tribalism, and thank goodness I didn't create tribalism with this post, but I really just wanted to get an idea of where fans are going with their product and where they take in their business. WWE on ESPN Netflix came at 35% of the fan base said that they're going to stick with that. Right. And even if the price is different, AEW on HBO Max got a 23% of the fan votes. TNA AAA got 4%. And I think that's some people wanting to branch out and learn other aspects of wrestling. I seen some comments, shout out to, my friends on there that actually said, I need to be more open to things like TNA and AAA and just maybe I'll shift. Right. And then 38% said none, I'm done. So
that's very alarming right there.
38% was the first place answer.
And before we go any further, there's still 2 days and 11 hours left on this poll.
Yes.
So please go visit that poll on there,
Yep.
the Bryan Adkins on X, and give us your thoughts and please vote.
Yeah, because I really want to know, and I'm hoping that, you guys in the next day or so, I want to leave it open because I want to see what everybody thinks. And if you can share that would help us out just to kind of gauge the business a little. And that's going to help us talk about what content we may talk about in the future. So I see the results of that and I'm like, well, maybe I should start covering more of this, or maybe I should start helping create discussion about these other brands with people. And, again, Carlos and them do a great job on the X Spaces covering a lot of those different brands. So very alarming though. Like you said, John, like 38% was in first place of I'm done.
I mean, it's only, even though it's 38%, that's still alarming when none, I'm done is your in the lead right now. That's really scary for the wrestling industry.
Well, and I would like to think most of the followers I have on Twitter X, they are a WWE, AEW fan base pretty much. And I've got a mix of both, but when you have almost 40% of them saying I'm good, I'm tired, right? And then 35% is WWE. I don't expect WWE to actually win a little bit more because they are the most known brand, right? And so people, that's what they recognize the most. And so I think this shows that, man, people are either done, they're open to new options, or they're just like, I'm going to stick with what I know, and no matter what the increase is. So.
And really the other way to look at this poll, Bryan, 35, 23, 4%, that's still 62%. That's still going to watch wrestling over the 38% that say that they're not done. But again, what's alarming is when you got more than a third of the people voting saying, no, I'm done. That's not good as a whole. I mean, that's telling you whether you're WWE, AEW, TNA, AAA, you got a lot to improve there to get that number down.
And John, you just sparked this thought in my head. The WWE did bake that into their price increase because you think about it, we went from around $10 a month to $30 a month. And they know what they're doing in that sense. So that tells me that these numbers are probably accurate from this poll. And the WWE said, we're going to triple the amount of the gate to get in to watch. And we'll be okay because even if we drop follower or users or viewers, I should say, we'll be okay because we've raised our costs so much that the people that are going to stick with us will incur that cost. So,
yeah. And, again, where we talked, this is kind of sounding like WWE really is more in tune with gaining the business part of the eyes on product than the actual fans. That's where it is a little alarming, Bryan. And I think that the numbers on this poll does show that, like you mentioned, it's kind of scary. So I really hope they can find ways to turn these numbers around, but very, very alarming for these early results on that. So again, folks, I'm going to flip it up here. Be sure to go follow Bryan at the Bryan Adkins. Go find that poll on his timeline and go vote. And be sure to leave comments or responses in that thread. Let us know what you think. Be very honest too. We're not here to be tribalists, like Bryan mentioned. We're open to all wrestling fans, whether it's WWE, TNA, AEW, New Japan. Get there, vote, let us know your thoughts. Yeah, Bryan, I think we kind of ran out of steam now here. We're getting ready to wrap it up here, but let's get into some shout outs and final thoughts here.
Well, I want to shout out everybody that helped me with that little mini project. Ted Hillbilly Hill, Mike McCarthy from Chairshot Sports, Carlos, as we mentioned a couple times here, yourself, John. I know I'm missing people. Martin Jannetty, Rob Van Dam, like just everybody that helped kind of put that together. It was, I enjoyed trying to do
Miami
that.
the Great.
Miami the Great. Oh my gosh. He was so excited to help with that project. I'm so sorry, man. I should have definitely thrown you in there. And I want to do something like that again with all you guys. I think that helps build community. And, you know, anytime any of us can try to do something like that to cross pollinate, I call it. And, you know, the goal for me was to help get exposure to Miami the Great's channel and to Chairshot and yourself and to everybody else's stuff. And because at the end of the day, it's such a cool little community that we have. And I think it's just, we all kind of support and help each other. And that's what I like about it. So I believe it or not, got a list of names up here on my dry erase board of round 2. If I decide to do one of different people I want to tie in to that project too. So, but thank you. That's my shout outs. Thank you to everybody that helped with that. And that keeps that kind of magic alive in the IWC.
I want to give a big shout out to Miami the Great, Final Boss Lady, and everybody at the DWE community. They run a really awesome community there. They're actually getting more involved with not just WWE, but other wrestling promotions. So be sure to go check them out. They do some really great stuff on the X Space, especially on their YouTube channel. Go give them a listen, get involved in their conversations. Again, we'd like to shout out Carlos, who does a really wonderful job on the X Space. He does some hosting with Stampede, Sean Robinette, also Credit Dev, who have become active members in our community in the X app. So thank you to everybody who does go there and checks out our community, gets involved. Be sure to listen to everybody who posts their podcast there too. You get great content from Marks with Mikes, the Choke Slam Report, Chair Shot Sports gets in there every once in a while. John Anthony, Mike McCarthy. Gosh, they got one other there, and I can't remember. I apologize. I promise I'll.
Skywalker.
What's that?
Princess Skywalker. I think I've seen her out there.
Yes, I think that's who I was missing. Princess Skywalker. Be sure to go listen to all of them. They do really great content there, especially our friend Ted the Hillbilly Hill on Ted's Takes Wrestling on his YouTube channel. Also, be sure to give Jim, that fan in the van, some support there. He's been talking some wrestling lately, and even though he's finally going to get back into his niche here shortly, football season is getting underway. Be sure to go check his podcast out, Fan in the Van, for some great NFL takes. Also, Two Dudes Sports News and the Steel and Teal Talk. They do really great job keeping up with all the sports around. Also, Brent and Dave over at the 1420 Sports Board podcast. Hockey season, which is one of their favorites, will be coming up here shortly.
And also a little shout out to the Sport Coin Network. You know, we just had a little fun draft over there for NFL fantasy football. I will give anybody a word of advice coming into football season. Do not let auto pick your picks. I made some very embarrassing picks in my Sport Coin fantasy football draft. So do not let auto pick for you. Just fair warning to everyone. Best practice.
Did you draft Ray Finkel again?
You know, that would have been better than what I would have gotten.
All right. Anyway, sorry for that little bit of a cough burst, folks. We're out of time here. Hopefully, again, we'll get something going next week. No guarantees, but I will for sure be back in 2 weeks. So with that being said, Brian, I hope you have a great one. It was a pleasure having you help me again. William should be making a comeback here shortly. He's on the mend of getting better. So prayers up to William for healing up, and we'll be running things with me here again shortly. Without any further ado, I hope you all have a great week of wrestling, and we'll catch you all later.